Hello everybody, Gavin McCormack here. We are in South Georgia after crossing the Southern Ocean all the way into this beautiful cove here. And this week we're talking all about kelp, which is an amazing and interesting organism that lives in the ocean around here. And we're very lucky to be with Bea. Hello, Bea.
Hello, Gavin. How are you?
I'm very good. Bea is a marine biologist and she's helped us to navigate into this amazing cove. If you look behind us, we actually have a lot of seals here. Bea, tell us, what is kelp?
Okay, Gavin. Kelp is not an animal, is not a plant. Kelp is a protist, but it's a plant-looking organism that actually grows quite well in this area here. Kelp tends to prefer cold to temperate water, so there's very few species of kelp in the world that actually grow in waters that are slightly warmer.
Amazing. Now look, we've retrieved some kelp here from the ocean. It actually looks a little bit like a snake. It feels a little bit spongy for the children at home, and it's very, very long, isn't it? Look at this. It's absolutely enormous. Now, tell me, I'm guessing this hangs into the water like this, and how does it work? Do organisms feed on it? Do they swim in between it? What happens?
So, we have two main different species of kelp in this area here. So we have, this one is called the bull kelp, and this one is called the giant kelp, Laminaria, okay? So this is a Latin name, and the bull kelp gets attached to the rocks, and it kind of floats on the surface of the water horizontally.
Right.
Yes, it's got this beautiful movement. It looks like a snake actually.
Wow.
With the current. It does provide food for different species and also shelter.
Right.
So it doesn't sink. Inside, it's got a very funny looking tissue that looks like a honeycomb.
Okay.
And that provides, and there's air inside as well. So there's specialized cells that help the kelp to produce air inside the tissues. So it's very light and it floats.
Now, what kind of animals would feed off of this, and how would they eat it? Are you going to bite it? Do they take a big chunk out of it? How does it work?
So mostly grazers like mollusks would feed on kelp, and when they feed, just like any other animal, they will produce poo. So they will poo, and their poo is super rich for the seabed. So it will fertilize the seabed as well. So there's a full cycle right there. So they'll take little nibbles of the kelp because they're tiny little animals. So they don't have a big mouth. They'll just graze on it.
Wow, and it's really, really spongy. It feels amazing. Now, how long does it take for this to grow? I mean, it's very long, and does it use photosynthesis? Is this how it grows?
Yes, it's a photosynthetic organism, and it grows quite well, actually grows a lot. Different species grow at a different rate, but the growth rate of kelp generally is very, very quick. So they can grow several centimeters a day.
My goodness me, that's very fast indeed. Now, I'm guessing animals take shelter in here. What kind of animals will a seal swim inside of here to evade a predator? How does it work in terms of helping animals to protect themselves?
Yes, so different species, especially with these ones that grow. So this is a giant kelp. This is a laminaria, and the giant kelp will attach itself mostly to the seabed, to the substrate, right? And then it will grow vertically. But because they grow a lot and they're quite light, they will just drift with the current as well, but they're still attached to the bottom, okay? And these funny looking things here, unfortunately they're broken, but they're called pneumatocysts, okay? And pneumatocysts have air inside and help the kelp, just like the bull kelp, it helps the giant kelp to float.
My goodness me, that's really remarkable.
It's really interesting, and when we have a lot of individuals growing together, they will provide shelter for many species. So like penguins can hide in the middle of the giant kelp to run away from predators like a leopard seal. Leopard seal is the main predator of penguins in this area here. Species of fish, little fish will seek for shelter as well, and just other pelagic little organisms that might need protection.
Cool. Now, kelp here in the Great Southern Ocean, in the South Shetlands, in the peninsula of Antarctica, and here in South Georgia is quite common. Do we find kelp everywhere around the world, or is it just around this area?
No, we find kelp in certain latitudes. So as I was mentioning, kelp prefers colder waters to grow. They don't resist to heat, to hot water very well. So what happens is if the water starts warming up too much, they might detach from the substrate, and that way they will die and they wash up on the beach. So when you find kelp on the beach, sometimes we find beaches around the world full of kelp, is because it detached and it died.
So I think what's very important this week to understand is that without kelp in this environment, we've got a big problem in the ecosystem because animals can't graze on it, animals can't hide from their predators, and if the world warms up, unfortunately, kelp will not be able to survive because it likes colder waters. Is that right?
Correct, and there's something really cool about kelp. It's one of my favorite things about kelp. Okay, so as we know, climate change is something real, and the pace that the world is warming up is quite scary actually, and that's because we as humans, we've been producing more carbon than we should. Okay, carbon is not the villain, guys. Carbon has been around since the dawn of time, right? And the main role of carbon is to actually keep the earth warm. It keeps the heat inside, otherwise we would freeze again. But the problem is we have been contributing as humans, we've been contributing greatly for a mass production of carbon that the earth cannot offset. So it's trapping too much heat in here. And plants like trees, land trees, they are responsible for absorbing a lot of carbon and producing oxygen so we can breathe. But protists also absorb a lot of carbon.
Wow.
So kelp forests are responsible for trapping a lot of carbon and stopping it from being released out in the atmosphere. So they're great. And we call it blue carbon because it comes from the ocean.
Yes.
Yes.
So what you're trying to tell us is, the children at home and everyone watching this, is this beautiful piece of kelp here is actually helping us to curb climate change. It's absorbing carbon and trapping it inside and helping keep the world nice and cool.
Isn't that fascinating?
It is really
Yes.
amazing.
It's really cool.
This week, we want you to act just like this kelp. We don't want you to be slippery and long and slimy, but we want you to be a carbon keeper. We want you to get out into your environment, into your community, into your school community, and actually start to think about how you can work as a community and as a team to stop the amount of carbon escaping into the atmosphere, just like this amazing kelp here. Bea, it has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you, Gavin.
And we'll see you all next week.